Hello, everybody. My name is Sharon Malik, and I'm the head of content marketing here at MHC. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today about interaction experience management, or IXM, and how as companies shift to digital, it gives us a framework that bridges their journey from traditional CCM, customer communications management, to customer experience management. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive a follow-up email with a link to that recording after the webinar. In addition, all participants are muted, so please type any questions you have into the Q&A, and we will follow up with you after the webinar. Right, adding and managing interactive engagement across the customer journey while maintaining compliance adds a lot of complexity, so I'm pleased to have our speakers today give us some insights and guide our thinking on this. Kaspar Roos is an analyst and highly recognized leader in the customer communications space. He's the founder and CEO of Aspire CCS, a market research and strategy firm specialized in the CCM and CXM industry. Aspire provides strategic market intelligence to technology vendors, service providers, enterprises, and investment firms. Kaspar has nearly 20 years of experience in the space and is a regular speaker at industry conferences and events like this one. Amanda Beasley, welcome. She is the Vice President of Consulting at Aspire. She has over 25 years experience helping clients transform their critical customer communications, and she has an in-depth knowledge of the technology, design, and data capabilities required to underpin these services. Before joining Aspire, Amanda held a number of leadership roles, most recently as board director and MD for a large European service provider. She has deep expertise in providing solutions across the customer communications ecosystem, as well as designing and deploying strategically critical programs to improve customer experience. So welcome to you both. We're so pleased to have you here, and I will turn this session over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you so much. Firstly, I'd like to introduce the agenda for today's webinar. As Sharon mentioned, we're going to explain how the evolution of customer interactions is really becoming a key bridge from merely managing communications to really driving that positive customer experience and thereby driving growth and engagement. We're going to hear from Kaspar about the key market dynamics. What exactly is interaction experience management, and why is it the bridge to customer experience management? And how do we implement these strategies? We're going to bring all those pieces together, and then we're going to hear from our webinar sponsors today, MHC, in terms of their perspectives. Before we get to the main agenda, I want to quickly introduce Aspire. We're a global analyst organisation who purely focus on customer communications. All B2C organisations obviously communicate with their consumers, and that landscape's becoming far more complex. From a regulatory perspective, this has traditionally been seen as an operational overhead and cost to be driven down, rather than a key channel for growth and brand promotion and retention, which we believe it really is. In the modern landscape, all of those interactions are really key. And we're seeing through our insight that consumers are really judging organisations through those interaction touch points. Conversely, those organisations aren't really thinking about the consumers when they're through their communication strategies for regulatory communications. And as a result, we're seeing dissatisfaction rising. Our insight shows that consumers are prepared to act on that dissatisfaction as well. So at Aspire, we use our in-depth research insight to analyse technology vendors and service providers and really work with them to help them shape their capabilities and services and future roadmaps to really meet those requirements of this evolving market. We work with enterprise executives at an advisory level to help them really maximize the opportunities through these critical channels and help them with vendor selection, as well as investors and private equity companies who really tap into our deep knowledge when they're looking at M&A and investments in this space. We're a global organisation. We have teams in Europe and North America, and it's from there that we service our clients internationally. Our analysis of vendors is available to enterprises through our digital leaderboard. As you can see, we've fully analysed MHC and they are a leader in their category. I would encourage you to visit the website and look at that independent analysis. Kaspar's done a great video which really summarises MHC's capabilities in this space. I hope that gives you some context to the webinar today, and I'll pass you over to Kaspar.
Great, thanks so much, Amanda. That's a great introduction. Before I start, I need to apologize. My voice is a little bit hurting. I think there's lots of flu and other things going around. Wherever we are, I hear it from clients all over the place. Apologies if I need to mute myself for a second to get some water, but let's get going. So, understanding the CCM to CXM evolution, this has been a sort of critical part of what we at Aspire really sort of, do and focus on. So if you look at outbound communications, bank statements, insurance policy, business correspondence, all sort of mission critical communications, they actually are changing more into sort of, I would say, digital interaction points. It's a natural progression. The market is changing. Customers are asking for more digital engagement. And as these sort of communications sort of evolve, they're becoming more sort of, bidirectional in nature. It's just by nature or by sort of shifting them to digital. That's sort of what happens there. So you can see it here where there's a couple of examples about sort of smart forms, digital account information that's more bidirectional, can dynamically update, mobile payment options, chatbots. There's all kind of new channels that are being used. It's not that these, transactional communications are going away, but they're being sort of distributed across digital channels. And what is very interesting, as that sort of evolution happens, by default now organizations can actually collect information back from their customers. They're starting to build much more sort of natural interactions and orchestrate these type of sort of interactions. So if you look at the typical customer journey, they've become much more complex, and we often sort of say that the typical sort of outbound endpoint has turned into a digital midpoint. And now organizations need to think about, how do we drive customers to these sort of new digital channels? How do we sort of make sure that we stay compliant? How can we sort of, deal with these type of complexities? So software is evolving in order to sort of support that transformation. And at the same time, something very interesting is happening as well. And that's what we really want to talk about here, these next sort of 20-25 minutes. And that is that the shift that we've seen from outbound print, document-centric sort of CCM into more those sort of bi-directional type sort of experiences, a similar shift is visible when we look at sort of how organizations actually collect incoming information and how they deal with sort of the inbound and the form side of things. And we've tried to sort of visualize that here in this particular sort of, graphic. So when you look at the outbound side, it has shifted from print and document-centric processing to more digital communications, more mobile-first communications. We often classify that as CCM 1.0 versus 2.0, where the line of business becoming much more involved in that sort of transformation, but then shifting more to sort of digital and more personalized and more CX type interactions. And very similarly, you can see a similar transformation happening on the inbound side, where if we go back 20, 30 years, it was like, something got printed, a form that got sent back, and that entry data was sort of keyed in by people and got sort of processed, and all that, these sort of workflows. I mean, to be honest, just a couple of years ago, we run into a big enterprise that still had these sort of workflows in place. I'm pretty sure it still exists out there, where they sort of relied a lot on sort of print communications and had large offshore teams keying in all that information. But most businesses nowadays have sort of moved these really sort of, document-centric, labor-centric processes to more sort of digital forms. that are smart. They can be sort of programmed. They can sort of serve just the right questions based on what they already know about the customers. But what is very interesting is that that next evolution is now coming, where some of these questions don't necessarily need to be presented in a form. They can be embedded in digital interactions. So for example, you could have a personalized video that can actually ask questions and collect information back. Or within a chat environment, you could sort of collect that, or in a mobile push, or in a mobile interaction, or text message. There's lots of different additional channels that are being deployed, and basically help organizations to capture that information that they need to get from their customers in a way that consumers find typically more engaging and more friendly, particularly when it comes to very complicated compliance-based large forms that people need to fill in when they fill out or do their taxes, or basically deal with very specific sort of requirements. So this transformation has been going on for a while now. And what is very interesting is, as I sort of mentioned, that these digital communications are becoming more complex in nature, because you can see that as that sort of shift from outbound static print or even an inbound form, as that moves more to digital and bidirectional interactions, the complexity to manage that and to orchestrate that is actually rising. However, on the flip side, it also brings much more opportunities for better customer experience and even, funnily enough, to reduce a lot of the cost associated with these sort of print and document-centric workflows. Now, particularly when you think about new technology that's coming in, so AI, I mean, have to mention it. It's a game changer in a lot of these sort of workflows, and we'll show you a few examples in this presentation here. Another thing to be very aware of is that organizations do this, because they want to reduce cost and they want to build a better experience for their customers. But typically also now, the younger generation, they're not so loyal anymore to their brands, and they are actually shifting or moving to other providers or much quicker than what we traditionally see when we look at older generations. So the slide on the left, or the data point here, basically shows that 1 in 5 consumers worldwide have switched providers last year because of poor customer communications. And you can see that millennials and Gen Zs, the 18 to 25 years old and the 26 to I think it's now 42, 43 years old, they actually have a much higher propensity to sort of change compared to the older generations there. And it's caused by multiple sort of facets. It's like time is a very it's a challenge for them. They don't have a lot of time. So if you make the experience hard, it really sort of annoys them, or it helps them to, or these things sort of cause them to switch. Incorrect information, content that's not easy to understand. The older generations, you see, it's more related to data security. There could be all kinds of reasons why people actually are moving to other providers. But I think in general, if I move back here this slide, I think in general, what happens is when you move from print to digital, consumers in their mind will compare your digital experience with what they have experienced using other providers who are not bound by regulatory and compliance regulations, and can basically provide much richer digital experiences. And this fundamentally is a big problem when you think about sort of our industry, and I say our, which is more the regulated B2C industries like financial services, utilities, insurance, public sector. A lot of things that you may want to do sometimes are restricted because of the regulatory sort of implications. That said, there are ways of navigating these things. But it's something to be aware of, that consumers in their mind sort of compare them against sort of, the Apples and the Amazons of this world. Another interesting data point here is that younger consumers are much more interested in self-serve than the older generations. So the implications of this is, if you are developing a new way, or you're looking at modernizing the way you communicate and engage with your customers, be very aware that a lot of the younger generations want to have full control over channel, over when and how they engage with you, and preferably want to do that by using mobile interactions, mobile app, mobile communications. So we see that very, very clearly in our research. And the market has sort of moved to that. You can see that there's lots of digital mobile first comms out there, whether you want to sort of, create documents, you want to read documents, sign documents, fill out forms, secure checkout. I mean, everything almost that you want to do digitally can be done on your phone, and you need to really take that sort of mobile first perspective when you think about the future. So all these things said, there's a real sort of opportunity here, and you can see it because a lot of these digital examples here that I've shown, they have form fields. There's an ability for customers to interact and to provide information back. And that is a big problem then in terms of how do you deal with that? How do you manage these things? And how do you optimize them in order to drive a better experience? So that leads us to sort of, what IXM really is in a sense. So let me take a few moments to sort of explain that. But I thought it would be helpful to start off by showing a slide here from our research. So what we found is that organizations that are investing in more bidirectional channels, you can see that here, mobile push chatbot, intelligent voice assistants, Internet of Things devices, digital fax is more US healthcare related, but it's interesting as well, but that's an aside. What you would see if we cut this by their net promoter score, meaning organizations that have a low net promoter score, they focus typically less on customer experience, versus companies that have a high net promoter score, more CX leaders. What you would find here very clearly is that the CX leaders are seeing a need to actually invest in more bidirectional channels, less so in print. You can see that very clearly on the left, and really sort of starting to look at these sort of bidirectional channels. And this was this is a screenshot from some work that we did with a healthcare payer company. And was very interesting because they showed us this sort of journey map, if you will, and they basically explained this is a journey for a couple that has gone through a divorce, and the policy needs to be reissued, and the kids need to be put on this new policy. And and they told me, they said this is the most sort of emotionally intense journey that we see, where we tend to find most complaints, there's most sort of interactions across multiple channels, and you can see all the different channels they support, and people sort of come in and they lodge complaints, or they got questions, and typically there's a lot of interactions in these type of sort of journeys. And they gave this example to say, well, actually we're modernizing our customer service approach, we're building a new mobile app, we're building a new website, and we're looking at a way to visualize it, to bring all these interactions together in order to give customers a better experience. And the question, we helped them with some insights into their CCM technology, their outbound document composition technology, and we're asking questions whether the CCM solution that they had chosen, whether they could support these type of sort of outbound channels as well, and could sort of log these interactions and bring them back into their sort of customer data platform. And then what they asked was, they said, well, this is what we actually wanted to build. We want to sort of collect all the messages that we send to customers, the information that we get back, and we want to group them. They call that the services flow. I would say this is a customer journey in essence. So you can see this here, the second one from the right one at the top, collecting payments, address change. So combining these messages into sort of journeys, and then what they want to do is to sort of sort them chronologically, and then present them back to the customer and say, well, when you log into our app, when you come to our portal, you can see all the interactions that we have had. You can see them by journey. You can see if a journey hasn't completed or something happened, that you can go back in and you can continue that journey. You can complete it. And these type of things I find very interesting, because this is how organizations are starting to join the dots and looking more holistically about how they can drive communications, engagement, customer interactions, with a goal of building a better customer experience. And this ties into some of the research that the leading market, I would say the management advisory firms, the McKinseys and these guys, if you look at what they're sort of producing in terms of their sort of thoughts on how banks and financial services and insurance, how they need to evolve their sort of IT architectures, they're talking about core modernization and composable architectures, and how these new type of cloud native solutions basically provide the core of how businesses actually work. But then on top, you plug in components that specialize in particular areas. So if you overlay the CCM view into this picture, I would say CCM is a key outbound channel, document composition, where you would sort of send communications. But what I find very interesting, if you take a more IXM perspective and there is an experience layer that provides information back, now you can see the need to say, okay, if we deploy that as just a channel, actually we can use that as an overlay when we go into KYC. We say, well, know your customer processes. I mean, this is a massive problem for many banks worldwide. The country I live in, the Netherlands, we just yesterday had another major bank who got fined, 20 million euros because they failed in their KYC processes. Funnily enough, I met actually a marketer from that bank a few months ago who was tasked to improve their KYC process. They know it's a big problem in this particular bank. And she was looking at CCM technology, IXM technology to sort of say, how can we actually make sure that we provide a much richer interaction experience, that we collect the right information from our customers that we need to collect from a compliance point of view, bring that back in, and then once we sort of gone through that, communicate in a way that is also sort of compliant. So there's these type of sort of developments where a lot of the customer experience is taken a little bit out of the IT world and is basically being managed by other parts of the business because of various sort of business reasons, as well as sort of the regulatory reasons. So this shift to cloud, to API, to microservices is a big change that is going on in the market. So if I need to visualize this in a sort of more graphical approach, you can say, well, actually there's a core business process, whether it's onboarding, whether it's a passport application, whether it's a credit card, a bank account opening, whatever the sort of process is that requires interactions between a customer and a provider. The experience can actually be separated from the IT tools that typically are dealing with that. A lot of the low-code, no-code tools support these type of sort of forms, but they tend to be included in there, embedded in there, and not so rich typically from a customer experience perspective. And we really struggle when you want to take this to additional channels. So what you would see here is typically the separation that is starting to happen, where you could say, okay, let's sort of, design the logic and the sequencing and the validation separately from sort of the design. And that brings a lot of benefits, and not only from a sort of tech perspective, but also how you would manage this, and that you would create teams that can be much more agile and can sort of do this independently from the IT organization, but teams that sit in the business and are really close to the customer. So the IXM really sort of evolution in the sort of space where CCM technology providers are moving into this IXM opportunity, as well as that we've seen organizations starting to bring the CCM and IXM and the forms teams together because they see there's benefit in sort of managing that more holistically. Think about that example that I showed you with the healthcare company that wanted to sort of show all these interactions and communications and touch points in a more holistic way. Now, another reason why IXM is becoming more sort of important is because we see a lot of drop-off in these sort of areas. Abandonment rates in financial services, 76%. 4 out of the 5 people that start a credit card application will not finish it because of all the challenges associated with what you need to do. And on one aspect, it's that side, it's like, asking the right question, making it really sort of useful. But another really key important thing to keep in mind, and this is why I provide this example here, which I really like. This is a US can manufacturer. And the point I want to make is you have to think about the design aspect, the UX, because organizations that do not focus on UX and provide a really poor experience to customers, they see a lot of unnecessary drop-off in the processes. So here, this sort of company here, drink manufacturer, had this can on the left, and it doesn't look that great, to be honest. I wouldn't feel attracted to it, to buy this. And they did this, they sort of redesigned it. And then on the right, that looks like a fresh, nice looking sort of can that I would probably pick when I'm in the supermarket and looking for a drink there. So you would see, I can really believe that led to lots and lots of more sales for them in the region of 300 million. But the point is, if you see a lot of drop-offs, So fixing the intelligence, asking the right questions, minimizing the number of questions you need to ask, but also thinking about the design aspect, absolutely critical. And what is very interesting is when you then look at why people are investing in these technologies, I mean, to reduce cost and to be compliant, these things are absolutely critical. But if we sort of, map this against the Net Promoter Score that we talked about earlier, what you would see is something really interesting, is that companies that are really focusing on customer experience, for them, obviously, to increase customer experience is very important. But what is interesting here is that you can see to achieve regulatory compliance or even to sort of, reduce cost, these things are less important for them because they already have made or have met these sort of regulatory points. But for them, it's more about experience. But if they do that, getting more operational efficiency, increase automation, and actually, in fact, because of that, also reducing cost is a result that comes out of this as well. So to wrap this up, what to think about when you need to sort of implement this. And I would say choosing the right tech infrastructure is absolutely critical. You have to think about cloud, API, the fact that you can actually create a sort of low-code, no-code workflows in place that enable the business teams to do this themselves. So empowering these business users and to have them sort of be responsible for the right engagement and channel strategy is absolutely critical. And also, I really believe that you have to bring some sort of cross-functional collaboration in your business to really make this work and to get most out of it. And I know this is a big challenge for many large organizations, but it's absolutely critical in a sense. I wanted to touch very briefly a little bit on AI because we're seeing a lot of development in this space. We see AI coming in to analyze content, to do workflow coding, to help with translations, to help with content rewrites. So all these things I talked about, how organizations can actually design those communications better, those forums, those interactions. A lot of these tasks will be supported by AI. And it's not in the future. It's today. We're seeing it. Vendors are implementing these things. End users are building their own LLMs. So that's another big trend in our space right now. Bring your own LLM and plug it into the tech that the vendors offer in order to achieve all these benefits, to make accessible communications more accessible, or to migrate from one platform to the other. And lastly, I think what we're starting to see more is that enterprises are enabling some of their end users that have a need or have who need to create these forums and these communications, that they are supported by AI to really sort of do this. And they can use a text prompt to tell the engine what to create and how to do this. So with that, my last slide here before I hand it back over to Sharon to close this out. Inbound and outbound communications are converging. We really sort of clearly see that. I think I've shown you a couple of sort of examples there, and the market is really changing and helping and changing more to sort of a better customer experience, to help end users to connect better with the brand and to sort of, use those latest, newest sort of innovations to, to be more flexible in how they engage and leverage other additional channels. So there's a real sort of shift happening. And also what I really talked about here today is that it's not longer just the outbound component, it's also the inbound and the sort of, interaction experience that is coming together. And I think that the services, that's the last point here, a lot of these things are, talk a lot about sort of technology and software, but also it's important to get the right sort of, partner here that can help you implement these things and to get you sort of off a good start. So with that, thank you so much for listening. And Sharon, I'll hand it back over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kaspar. I just want to take a moment to connect what you've presented today with what we do here at MHC. In terms of a quick company snapshot, we are headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We've been in existence since 2001 and build powerful software to streamline the automation of critical documents for vendors, employees, and of course, customer communications. We have over 1,300 global customers across 50 countries with over 100 integrations to other enterprise business systems and most importantly, we have a loyal customer base with over 40% of our customers being with us more than 15 years and excellent peer reviews on G2. So check us out on that platform. In terms of our North Star CCM solution, we're recognized by a variety of esteemed analysts, most notably Aspire, who you've heard today. And in 24, they deemed us a leader on their AnyPrem CCM, SAS, and IXM leaderboards. And in terms of MHC's perspective on IXM, I think one of the comments you made, Kaspar, about us sums it up, and I printed it here. We have continually innovated our CCM platform to be modern, with customer centricity at the heart, enabling it to empower our customers to meet their evolving business goals. So that's what it's all about, and that's what we do. Help clients deliver these more customer-centric communications with data-driven personalization, interactions, dynamic engagement, and managing that across the customer journey. And we agree this shift is really of critical importance to meet these changing customer expectations, to stay competitive, and then also to, as Kaspar said, extract information, data, insights, and gain greater value from these regulatory communications. So today, Kaspar, you've talked about some of the essential technologies for enabling this shift, and shown on the right-hand side is what MHC provides in terms of, cloud hosting. We are AnyPrem, but we have cloud, of course, to AI-powered Gen AI for authoring, support for interactive document formats, and interactive engagement channels. There's a whole bunch of them that we'd love to talk to you about. Enabling workflows to be both compliant and engaging with intelligent forms and journey mapping and orchestration. So thank you, Kaspar, for introducing this IXM framework to clarify essential capabilities. And in terms of the complete solution, there's a whole lot more to North Star CCM in terms of how we enable non-technical business users with AI, with no code, low code, and just to operate without IT assistance. And so this is another topic, but we would love to speak with any of you on the call today if you're curious to learn more. Okay, and then in terms of today's webinar, I'm just going to close with a big thank you to Kaspar and Amanda for your time and your insights. The shift to customer-centric yet compliant experiences, as you say, is a lot of complexity, and we really appreciate your clarity and the way you've guided our thinking about it. So thank you. Thank you also to all of our attendees today. Please direct any follow-up questions to me at the email provided. Be reminded you'll receive an email with a link to our recording that you can share with others. And please take a moment on exit to complete the survey presented. So thank you to our speakers today. Thank you to our attendees. We'll close now and enjoy the rest of your day.